Hello and welcome to the Learning Zone. In this session, I want to talk about full cycle learning. So when we say learning, what is it that we're talking about? Now, for many people that I encounter, learning is about presenting information and sharing lots and lots of content. And by doing that, enabling our learners or our audience to get deeper levels of understanding and make better meaning. And that's fine. But for me, that's only half the story. I'm passionate that our learning and development needs to be both effective and affective. Now, effective learning for me is that it enables people to do things differently or better. And affective is that by doing those things, they will have a positive impact in a wider arena. So for me, full cycle learning has got two elements. There's input as well as output. We often say if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And that's never more true than in a learning and development field. We've all had those experiences where we've been on training and we've had lots and lots of really good information. But then because we've not used it, sometime in the future, we lose our confidence and we've probably forgotten even how to begin. You see, if all we do is focus on input and making that input really cool and really interesting, then we're missing half of the equation. By giving great and stimulating information, but not using it, it's going to be quickly forgotten. And that might give us an explanation as to why we will constantly see very intelligent, very dedicated people returning to the training environment for a top or for a refresher. It's just simply because they've not put their learning into practice and it's gotten faded in their memory and they've just lost all connection with it. So, full cycle learning, it's got four elements. It's about input, encoding, retrieving, and application. Two in, two out. So let's start with input. Once upon a time, input was primarily through two methods: observing and copying people around us and listening to the stories that they would tell us around a campfire. Now, 35,000 years on from the campfire, that's still very, very true. You know, within well-designed and well-delivered, well-crafted learning interventions, the art of storytelling and showing great examples is still very much part of our learning cycle. But in the 21st century, learning is no longer dependent on sitting around the same campfire or being in the same vicinity. Technology has enabled us to create podcasts, online learning, books, television programs, you name it. It seems to be that particularly in the last 2 years, the number of methods of input has just really, really exponentially exploded. And that's great because it gives us variety and it gives us choice. So then the next challenge is encoding. Now, encoding is the process of taking learning from our short-term temporal memory into our long-term lifelong learning so that we can take it with us wherever we go and apply it into different contexts. Now, neuroscience has taught us that the key vehicle for that encoding process is emotion. The fastest and most effective way to make that transfer from temporal to long-term memory is using emotion. So by designing experiences that are rich in emotion and are delivered with high impact, we're accelerating and consolidating that encoding process. So it's no longer just a transient, forgettable information giving process. It's something that we can keep accessing time and time again. So we get a number of aftershocks beyond the event. So once it's been encoded, we now get into retrieval. It's one thing getting it in. The next hurdle is getting it into a format that we can easily retrieve it so that we can then put it into practice. So retrieval has three litmus tests. In order for it to be effective to be retrieved, it has to be easy, it has to be accurate, and it has to be quick. If it fails on any of those, then its relevance and its usefulness to us becomes less. And by it becoming less, it gets relegated. So when we're designing and delivering learning and development, what we need to be factoring in is how do we enable people to better retrieve that information that we've given them? How do we make it easier for them to retrieve it? How do we retrieve it in a form that's close to the real and accurate form that we gave them as possible? And how do we do it really, really speedily? And more importantly, when it really matters and we're under pressure. And then the final aspect is application. So this is where the rubber hits the road. Once we've retrieved that information, we need to put it into practice. And this is where I'm going to take you into CSI world, because what we need to do is create the means, the motive, and the opportunity for our learners to put that into practice. So we're talking about deliberate practice, and we're talking about my favourite old adage, positive reinforcement. They're not going to get it right first time. So how are we factoring in methods of giving them the ability to deliberately practice, but more importantly, receive positive and affirmative reinforcement that they're heading in the right direction? Now, in my experience, the more variety we have, the better. And a lot of organisations have invested heavily in creating lots and lots of different and stimulating input. So I think that's great. The great craft that we've created through brain-friendly and neuroscience has enabled us to encode. So if you're not already using neuroscience or applying brain-friendly, I heartily recommend you get up to date with that as quickly as possible. Where I think we can make some real inroads and real impact into effective and affective learning is by building in retrieval and application into our very design. So within our design and the events that we create, are we training our learners how to effectively, quickly, accurately, and easily retrieve the information that we're giving them? But more importantly, particularly if you're working for a large business, what are the avenues that you're exploring that beyond the training room, you're enabling your learners to put deliberate practice into practice and receive positive reinforcement? Remember, means, motive, and opportunity. So that's what I mean by full cycle learning: input, encoding, retrieval, and application. In my view, I think we're really good at input and encoding. Where I think we can make the best impact, or where you could make the best impact from today, is look at retrieval and look at application. What are the things that you can do to enable people to make effective retrieval? But more importantly, once you've let your learner go, how can you be sure that they're given the opportunity to apply their learning so that it stays with them?
So let's recap on that full learning cycle. Stage 1 is all about input. Moving from our previous two of observing and listening to stories, we've also got loads of technology and advancements. So let's use that to create some interest, engagement, curiosity, meaning and value for our learners. Neuroscience has taught us that encoding is the process of using emotion to transfer that learning from short-term memory to long-term. So what it means for us is design and deliver experiences that are impactful, memorable, energetic, and emotionally engaging for our learners. Retrieval is all about teaching our learners how to find the information that they need and that they've encoded. But what we've got to do is enable them to do that easily, accurately, and quickly. And then the final piece of the cycle is all about application. This is about putting it or creating avenues for action. So remember CSI, giving our learners the means, the motivation, and the opportunity to go and try this out. That requires space for deliberate practice and our old friend, positive reinforcement. Remember to hit the subscribe and share this with anybody who's in the field or is interested in getting more out of their learning. And I look forward to seeing you on the next session.